The big announcement was Avengers 5, which was called Kang Dynasty, is now called Avengers Doomsday. And we see the effects that one actor has had on an entire studio's output. It just feels like a waste because Kang the character should not have suffered because of it. And Kang the character is such a great linchpin to tie things on, especially when you build him up the way you have through movies and through Loki. I'm surprised they didn't recast.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I don't get that. But they chose instead, and we all knew that with the FF entering the MCU, that finally Doom would come into play. But now Doom has basically been swapped in as the replacement for Kang as the new baddie. And that is not a problem for me. I don't want to... Doctor Doom is the number one Marvel villain. But yeah, I just feel like they just chopped off an excellent story at the knees. And maybe Kang will come back, and they're letting things settle, and then like, well, Kang will come in as Doom's antithesis, like maybe Kang versus Doom in the next phase. And Doom does have connections to Kang. It's quite possible Doom is an ancestor of Kang. That was something that they have always hinted at in the comics. Then they go on to say, you guys know with Fantastic Four coming up, we finally get to introduce one of the best villains of all time, and we needed the best actor who could play him, and here's your Dr. Doom. So the big announcement was RDJ. Is Robert Downey Jr. coming to play Doom? We don't know what their take is going to be. I think for a lot of people, the news is both like, huh. Like, we want to be excited, but we're also afraid of what it is.
Yeah, because it reminds me of when they announced for Rise of Skywalker that Ian McDiarmid was coming back to play Palpatine again.
Yeah.
And my reaction to that initially was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And I was like kind of tentatively excited for that. It was like,
exactly.
That might be interesting depending on how they do it.
But
the way they did it was so terrible.
I know.
But in this case, we've got the Russo brothers have come back. They've never turned out a bad MCU movie or a bad movie period, as far as I'm aware. And I think it's the same screenplay writer they've worked with. So it's not going to suck. At least we know that.
My thing is, I don't want to be cynical, but I think this seems to be damage control. Because the Russo brothers had said, like, we had a great time. Now we're going to go over and do a Star Wars or something. Thanks, everybody. And it must have just been like, please, guys, come back and do whatever you want. And then they're like, can we use Dr. Doom? Absolutely, can you use Dr. Doom? I think the original plan was he'd be introduced in Fantastic Four, and then he, of course, would have been a part of Secret Wars because he's a huge part of Secret Wars, but I don't think he would have had anything to do with Avengers 5. And then they're like going, oh, shit. So I think this is kind of desperation that they must have backed up the money truck to the Russos and said, come on back and work your magic. 2 more Avengers movies, please. Thank you. And they do get it. I mean, how could you look at what they did? Every single Marvel film they did is considered like the best, including Winter Soldier and so forth. It's like they get it.
Oh, yeah.
So you're right. At the very least, it won't suck. Do I have concerns? I don't know.